All right. Hello, I'm Peyton Wilbanks, and this is my senior portfolio critique. I'm a creative technologies major. Most of my focuses sort of throughout these 4 years have been in graphic design, physical prototyping, and problem solving. And a little more description of problem solving is sort of the creative thinking mindset that we've learned here at Accurate. So some concepts we'll be going over today, sort of in my speech, sort of explaining everything. We'll start with the backstory, which is what brought me to Berry and creative technologies. Then we'll go into my theme and the explanation of my theme. And then we'll move on to evidence, supporting projects that contribute to the theme, to show you all sort of how this theme came to be and how played out. And then lastly, we'll conclude with my education and my future plans. So to start, my backstory. So my backstory started actually about several years ago, to where my oldest brother Holden came to Berry, and in his orientation, I came with him, and we went to a theater show here or at Ford, if most of y'all know where that is. And I immediately was walking with him, and I looked up at Holden and my parents, and I was like, "This is where I want to go. This is the college I'm going." And so after that, I kept visiting my brother, and then Porter came to Berry, and I visited him, and really just fell in love, and to the point where I bought a Berry lanyard out of the Viking shop and attached it to my. I didn't have a car at the time, so I attached it just to some random keys that I found until I finally got a car and was able to put it in my pocket. But I carried that with me as sort of a memento of what I have to work towards and sort of the goal that I had set of where I want to be. So throughout this, I just essentially focused in on I want to go to Berry. But it wasn't until I met one of Porter's friends, Spencer Russell, and Spencer was like, one time I'd love for you to come and see Heck Berry with me. And I was like, that sounds cool. I have no idea what that means, but I'm down. And so I came and visited, and I met Zane. And Zane sort of gave me a quick rundown on during that very hectic day while everybody was working on projects of sort of what they do here and sort of what creative technologies is as a whole. And I immediately fell in love. So that goes into sort of my portfolio theme, which is the explanation of or culmination of what I've done. So to start out, I'd like to give a small quote, which is one of my favorite quotes, which has sort of got me through college. And it's, "We chose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills." So my theme is learning the process of failing forward in user-centered design. And an explanation of that is starting out, failure is essential in the process of trying. To try is often to make yourself susceptible to failing, and that should not be a fearful thing. It should be sort of an exciting thing. If I get to fail, I get to try again, I get to see what works. Moving on is failing forward means learning from the process, sort of just like what I said. When you do fail, you want to remember to get back up. You want to remember to learn from your mistakes. As my father always told me when I was young, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And I've carried that through me ever since, or through my experience through high school and college, and I've really made that sort of a memento. And lastly, the last part of my theme, user-centered design. So I love making things, as most of my things are sort of physical. I like designing things with the user in mind, that benefit the user in some way, shape, or form and make their life easier, and in any way I can help that person achieve a goal of theirs easier. So now moving on to my supporting projects that will support my theme and sort of explanation I just explained. So we'll start with my Yeti part, then we'll move on to the Lightning Cloud, then graphic design, and then I'll close out with Capstone, which is Eloise's table. To start, the Yeti part. My first official project in CRT 101, a horrible project. I had awful planning and had no idea what I had set in motion for myself, and was really just like, oh, that looks cool. I think I'm going to try that. But I had no skills to actually implement what I thought in my head and the idea that I had came to. with that poor planning comes poor construction. So I bought 2x4s and I decided to cut them up and essentially fabricate this 100-pound mini cart with wheels off of a children's Batmobile from Walmart. I also didn't know how to put the axle on, so I decided to get a thin piece of metal I had found. I can't even remember. I'm pretty sure it was in the gravel yard, and hammer it around the side and then nail it to this board. And then to attach the rod, or an axle which is supposed to move, I welded it. So axle did not move. And I also ran out of those little sheets, and so I got this for a 90-degree piece of steel and drilled a hole through it while almost burning a drill bit, and poked the other side through to kind of give it some stability. So overall, one of the worst projects I've ever done, but a learning experience all the same, and a point for a major failure in which I could sort of step above and use it as a staircase for my journey in hacker. Moving on, the lightning cloud. This was my first hackathon. I had better planning. During hackathon, I was told that I've got to have a step-by-step plan. It's got to meet this requirement of 4 hours. But I was like, I don't know how to plan. So I sort of put a thing in motion. I remember submitting it, and my professor told me, you're gonna have to work a little bit on this planning thing. This schedule is not gonna line up, and you're either gonna do it really quickly or it's gonna take you forever. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So through organization, I finally made a better plan and achieved that skill, at least on an elementary level. Although it had very poor construction. So it worked, it looked cool, at least I thought. But about a couple days after the hackathon, it started falling apart. The glue that I had used did not seem to hold. The LEDs started failing, the wiring I had done was just not working out. And so that sort of drives me from learning from my failure towards construction, of realizing certain glues do not work between two different materials. So that brings me to my third project, which is graphic design. So I had a wonderful professor in this course. Interesting name, but wonderful professor, the same. But I was pretty naive to this concept of graphic design, of what graphic design was. But I knew that I was interested. I thought it was always something cool that I'd like to design digital pictures and things that seemed impossible just, clicking a button off of an iPhone. And with this, I sort of invited in the possibility of failure, because I knew nothing about it. There was obviously stuff I had to learn, which means I'm gonna have to mess up a couple times just to get it down. So through his office hours, he sort of one-on-one me for multiple hours, helping me just learn these different concepts, to where I just took part of my arms out in that one, and he was like, okay, that's kind of cool, but like, we're gonna have to do something a little better. He was like, why don't you try with a little bit of animate like a word? And so I picked wedge and started doing that one. And then it got to the point in the end of the semester where he was like, Peyton, I've taught you the skills I really need you to take your creative mind and use it to its full capacity. And so that brought these two down here, and surprisingly enough, I got an A. So now that moves on to my capstone, which has been a whirly-durly. So my capstone, I chose the pathway of enterprise, which essentially means mass producing the project I had chosen and being able to sell them. And I thought this was going to be easy, because in Chris's class of Fusion, I designed this flat pack piece of furniture, which is a children's table right here. And I was like, I've already made one. Surely it can't be that hard to make another. I've got the crawl bot. I'll just let it do all the work, and then I'll sand a little bit and paint it and sell it. I was so wrong. So the crawl bot decided not to help me out very much. It was extremely unreliable. And it also took me in all about 6 hours after debugging the crawlbot and redoing prints and essentially going through $50 sheets of plywood as scrap, because it would mess up. So this essentially drove me to a pivot of the flush trim bit, which Dr. Grout and I had talked about in a meeting, when I essentially came to Dr. Grout and was like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna need some help here. I need a way that I can, change the manufacturing part of my capstone. So I tried it, but there was still the problem of there was a lack of buyer market. I had to sell the tables at $215 because it took me 6 hours and the wood was extremely expensive. And it just got to a point where, I was trying to sell to newlyweds and people with young kids to sort of start their story with a table like this. And it was just out of the price range. And so that drove me to the next pivot, which ultimately helped me out a ton over my capstone experience. So this major pivot was to small tables. I had started this idea in our senior exit hackathon, and I thought it would be sort of a great idea to be able to give this culmination of my experience here at Berry to my fellow seniors as a reminder, hey, we've all worked a long, hard journey to get here, and I'm proud of everybody. So this table took about an hour to make 20 tables. Much better than the 6 hours. The laser cutter, way more reliable than the crawl block. And the inexpensive material compared to the $50 sheets of plywood was amazing on my bank account. These sheets were about $12 and I could make 20. So I'll let you do the math on how much money I can make out of those, selling at $15. But the buyer market was also much larger. College students were more able to buy these and can use them in various ways. Zane uses his for his Alexa. I've staged candles and stuff. I put a frog on mine and make it a tree frog. So honestly, it helped me a lot, and this pivot really showed the culmination of my failing forward of this isn't working. Okay, what can I change to make sure something does work? Moving on to my conclusion. Conclusion is I'm still searching for job opportunities. I've got some transitional jobs I'm considering, and essentially those are jobs where I think would be interesting. If I happen to stay, I do. But ultimately, I haven't really found the full career that I want yet, and that's partially due to creative technologies being just such a great major and such a forward-thinking major, where there's a couple jobs that are still finding ways in which they can utilize the skills that we've learned here. And but overall, my ideal jobs is anything out of the desk, anything moving. I would like to keep moving, manufacture possibly, and get to design and, like I said, help people achieve their goals easy. I do plan to stay in North Georgia. I've sort of built my roots here, and I like my roots. And so most of the jobs I'm considering are in the area with a little travel, but that's it. And the value of the lessons learned here, I can't thank enough for HackBerry in general for teaching me these skills. But the first is creative thinking. You don't really realize how much your mind changes from freshman year CRT 101 to capstone, of just when somebody asks you a question, somebody comes to you with a problem, a business school person per se would be like, oh, well, there's this solution. A HackBerry student would come, take a step back, look at the big picture, be able to see the big picture, and be like, okay, there's a bunch of things that could work. And then just like in CRT 101, it's like you got to down the scope. So then we take a step in and we're able to narrow those sort of answers and solutions to those problems and be able to provide the best answer for that person. Secondly is support and care. HackBerry Lab is a very special place because everybody here supports you, everybody cares about you, and everybody is willing to come help you on a project or be interested in asking you like, hey, what are you working on today? I can't tell you how many times I've come to the lab and been working on something like the flags at Hackathon yesterday, and I've probably been approached by 20 people asking, hey, what are you doing? And then followed by, that sounds really cool. I hope you do a great job. And lastly, the importance of environment. I believe HackBerry has been such a great sort of place to cultivate growth. Yes, we joke around and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, everybody's willing to support you. And this is really an environment where you're not afraid to fail and fail forward. And this is an environment in which, very special environment in which I think we're all very comfortable here. We're all sort of happy in our own skin and able to be as creative as possible. So thank you all. It has truly been a blessing to get to learn and grow under such influential and caring people. It's been a pleasure.